Next is the keynote address by Dr. R. Vasuki. She is the head of the Department of English, Manonmaniya Sundarnar University, Tirunelveli. She serves as the director of Center for Languages, MS University, and also the director of Center for Technical and Academic Writing. She is also the mentor of Mano Constantine College, Nagalabura. Her area of interest are comparative literature, women's studies, English language teaching, Northeast Indian literature, green literature, and African literature. Dr. Vasuki has published 20 research articles in reputed international journals and books. She has completed a minor research project on Black African women writers in 2012. She holds a PG certificate in teaching of English from ALFU. She was a postdoctoral fellow during the years 2015 to 2017. She has organized many conferences and seminars and has guided many MPhil and PhD scholars. She has also served as a chairperson of various board of studies of MS University, Tirunelveli. She is also the member of the Standing Committee of Academic Affairs of MS University. She is also a member of the English Language Teachers Association of India and also a member of the Organization for Industrial, Spiritual and Cultural Advancement International. With these words, I invite Dr. Vasuki to deliver the keynote address. Ma'am.
Thank you, Annie, for your nice words of introduction. Thank you. The outset, I would like to thank the organizing committee of the Department of English and Research Center, Nesamani Memorial College, Christian College, Marthandam, and Cape Comorin Trust, Kanyakumari. Special thanks to Dr. R.S. Regin Silvest for inviting me to deliver the keynote address in this 3-day international virtual conference on Fourth World Literature that starts today till goes on till 11th September. Thank you all, and a very pleasant morning to one and all present here in this August forum. So I was asked to give the keynote address on Fourth World Literature, and I was wondering what this Fourth World Literature was. When I explored this area, I found out that it referred to the Fourth World writings. And what is this Fourth World? Fourth World is a term that is used to refer to the most poverty-stricken people, the marginalized and economically backward countries. But when I dug deeper into that, before that I started to gain more insight into the first three worlds, okay, the first world, second world, and the third world. And I found out that the first world was, it referred to the capitalist countries or the developed countries, the rich countries that included, that was aligned with the NATO and capitalism, that included America and other countries. And the second world described countries that were aligned with the then Soviet Union, USSR, and socialism. And finally, the third world referred to those countries that neither aligned with the first world nor the second world. And it was generally understood that the third world was the developing countries, because most of the countries that didn't align with the first and the second world were the colonized countries. And the colonized countries, the Middle East, South America, Asia, and African countries. So since most of the countries were poverty-stricken, the third world was considered as a developing country, relatively a poor country. But when you think of the Middle East, it's not so. So you cannot generalize that the third world is a developing country alone, or they are also poor countries. So that, apart that, the fourth world also, it's not defined properly actually. There are a lot of confusions, because some say that the fourth world consists of the indigenous communities, ones who were majorities in a country, and then because of colonization and invasions, because of the genocide, cultural and physical genocide by the invaders and the colonists, these majority of the people, they became minorities in their own land, and they were deprived of their own rights of their land and yes, of their own land. So this is the fourth world, and there was a debate. There is a debate regarding whether we should include the Dalits, women, and the religious minorities with the fourth world. It's still a debate, and uh, people are not sure whether to include the Dalits also with the fourth world literature, because initially this fourth world, the concept, the term fourth world referred to the indigenous people, especially the native Red Indians of America and the Aborigines of Australia, the Maoris of New Zealand, and the tribal people. Because these people, they also, these people who are belonging to the fourth world, they did not depend on the global economy. They were self-sustained, and they also did not contribute anything to the global economy. So considering all this, these people were taken into fourth world. But certain research articles like the one titled Dalits and Tribes, the People of the Fourth World by Dr. Kumaraswamy and Dr. Srinivasa Rao, they all argue that the Dalits and the marginalized section of the society, including women and the religious minorities, should be taken into account. Okay, so there is another article by Dr. John Shaker who says that the Dalit literature is an ongoing intellectual exercise which is predating the fourth world literature, and that the fourth world literature or the fourth world refers to the indigenous people. Who are the indigenous people? Indigenous people, the UN in 2009 says that there are 7 themes concerning the indigenous people. The one is their poverty and well-being. Other is the culture that includes land and language. As ma'am was pointing about the language, that is also an important aspect. Then environmental issues, which includes land dispossession and climatic changes, and then education as a fundamental right, accessing health services, rights to self-determination, and their displacement because of globalization. So these are the 7 themes of indigenous people. And now, this fourth world, actually this kind of division of the first world, second world, third world, and fourth world, these gained popularity only after the world wars. Okay? And so when, as I said already, they do not depend on the global economy. They do not depend on others, these indigenous people. So how can we include the Dalit people? That is the question raised by one of the researchers in his article, Fourth World Literature in India, an Act of Appropriation. He talks about, he says that it is not the, it is only the scheduled tribes who can be included into the fourth world as indigenous people. The Supreme Court, in its judgment in 2011, it says that scheduled tribes are indigenous people of India who are probably the descendants of original inhabitants of India, and now they constitute only 8% of the total population, and they are most marginalized, vulnerable communities, and there's a high level of poverty, illiteracy, unemployment, disease, landlessness. And so these tribes are the indigenous people. They are notified in 30 states and union territories, and they account for 8.6% of the total population of 2011 census. So another thing, so this argument says that it is only the scheduled tribes or the indigenous people. Now, another argument is whether the Dravidians were original inhabitants of India. There too, another debate is there saying that it's not the Dravidians, but the pre-Dravidian aborigines who are the original people who inhabited the southern part of India, and they are called the Adivasis, or the tribals as we currently call them. The Cambridge History of India says, I quote, "It must be remembered, however, that when the term Dravidian is thus used ethnographically, it is nothing more than a convenient label. It must not be assumed that the speakers of the Dravidian languages are aborigines. In southern India, as in the north, the same general distinction exists between the more primitive types of the hills and jungles and the civilized inhabitants of the fertile tracts. And some ethnologists hold that the difference is racial and not merely the result of culture. It is the pre-Dravidian aborigines and not the later and more cultured Dravidians who must be regarded as primitive existing race. These pre-Dravidians are differentiated from the Dravidian classes by their short stature and broad noses. There is a strong ground for the belief that pre-Dravidians are ethnically related to the Vedas of Ceylon, the tales of the Celebs, the Batin of Sumatra, and possibly the Australians, Talas of the Celebs. Okay, so this is what is the argument, that even the Dravidians are not considered as the indigenous people of South India. It is only the pre-Dravidian aborigines, the tribals or the Adivasis, as we now call them. So that is one side of an argument. So mostly it's a generally believed. Actually, this term Fourth World came into use only after the publication of George Manuel's The Fourth World, an Indian Reality in 1974. It was only after the publication of this Fourth World book that this term Fourth World became so popular. Here I quote George Manuel's words: "Indigenous people descended from a country's aboriginal population and who today are completely or partly deprived of the rights of their own territories and its riches." So that is it. The natives who were originally in their land, they were deprived of their rights and they became minorities. They were outnumbered by the non-natives. So such countries, such people are thought of to be part of the Fourth World, and the literature produced by these people belonging to the Fourth World is called the Fourth World literature. Okay, so here I would say that even the natives of the Americans, the Ashkenazi Jews, the Romani people throughout the world, the Assyrians, the Kurds in the Middle East, the Pashtuns of Afghanistan and Pakistan, they are also marginalized, who are outnumbered by the non-natives. So when literature produced by these, the literature produced by these native people are called Fourth World literature. We have a lot of Fourth World output of Fourth World literature. There is also yes, as Sir Dr. Dunstan and Dr. Mahrunissa Patan, they were referring to Gordon Brotherstone's book, which is Book of the Fourth World, Reading the Native Americans Through Their Literature, which was published in 1992, where it was argued that the American continent was identified as the Fourth World. That is, even before, that is during when Columbus discovered America, it was the American continent was called as a Fourth World by the people those days, even before its discovery. But now the term has come on to describe those people who describe their own world, but in a threatened situation. They are threatened because of their political situation and of their present condition, but they express their glorious past that goes back thousands of years before Columbus in their literature. And one very important writer is Shoemaker, Adam Shoemaker, who has given out a lot of for America, it is not Shoemaker, as Sir was mentioning, it is Momaday, Scott Momaday, who is a great writer, he is the first Native American to win the Pulitzer Prize for his book, House Made of Dawn, which was published in 1968. He's a young Kiowa painter, poet, and come scholar. And this recognition, okay, a Native American winning a prestigious award or prize for his work has started or kickstarted a wide recognition of the Native literature. So he wrote many books like The Way to Rainy Mountain, The Names, and he has, these are autobiographical books that describes the Kiowa landscape, and he glorifies his father's tribal heritage in these books. And he has also written an essay, The Morality of Indian Hating, in Ramparts magazine. And he also started a Buffalo Trust, which is a non-profit organization where he helped young Native Americans to understand their heritage, culture, and he was trying to bridge the gap between the elders of the tribe and the young generation. Because only through oral narratives, most of the literature were passed on from generation to generation. Their culture, their lifestyle, their glorious history, everything was passed on only through orally, and nothing was written. And so he wanted to create a gap between the younger generation and the elders of the tribe. And so this Buffalo Trust was started. And many young people were enthusiastic about that. And in his writings, he also expressed his concern for nature, as most of the tribal literature or narratives, whether it is oral or written, most of the tribal works are concerned with environmental issues. They are very close to nature, and their life is closely twined with the Mother Nature. So that concern is also found reflected in his work. And his folklore is The Way to Rainy Mountain. So this, I'm mentioning all these works of Momaday because no, his works express indigenous emotions, life, culture, and heritage in a very realistic manner. So what happened and what is being written, that is not, they are in close proximity. There's not much difference in what is being written and what their life actually is. So this writer is a potential writer whom researchers can select and do their research on, because more and more insights can be gained as we explore deeper into this kind of indigenous literatures. And as far as Australian, I'm just citing examples for each kind of the indigenous people, each section, because I want to tell you that all these people have some kind of a similarity. The next writer is Australia's fourth writer, Adam Shoemaker, whose work has also gained much attention and public recognition. And he also talks about their own culture, reflects their culture and heritage in his writings. And there was a rally that was taken out in 1988 in Hyde Park, where 15,000 Aborigines and their supporters went on a rally. And this rally is an example for how these natives can come together, and how the weakness of a minority can be turned into a source of strength. So they felt so confident that when they come together, they can do a lot. So I'm quoting Bernard Smith on Black Australians I quote, during the past 20 years or so, a spirit of nationalism, which is uniting people of Aboriginal descent, has arisen throughout the Commonwealth. Whether the Aboriginal people constitute today a nation within a nation is arguable, but there can be little doubt that it is now the most important and vocal national minority in the country, is growing in strength and confidence daily, and is developing widespread international connections. So this is what this is the essence of how the unity or bringing together of all the natives, coming of all the natives together was giving them the confidence that they needed. So, so what Shoemaker did was he wrote a lot of books in English, like The Fourth World, where he expressed the problems faced by the Aborigines, their culture, their inclinations, and everything in their books. And this went on to other nations where the indigenous people also became aware of their own nature, and they all started connecting towards each other to form a strong group. We have Robert Merritt's play The Cake Man and Jack Davis' No Sugar. These are plays which won wide acclaim in the world theatre. And these Aborigines, they preferred poetry to other genres because they thought that it was very concise, very powerful, and it expressed, it was a genre that gave them the space to express their emotions perfectly. So they preferred poetry, and one of the great poets is Udagiro Nunakal. Her poetry was published in 1964. We Are Going. Okay, it's very important because it ushered in an era of self-reflective literary examination by Black Australians. That is, Black Australians never reflected on themselves earlier, but now through poetry, they were reflecting on their own culture, on their own identity, and they could realize the potential in every one of them. So this is one important aspect in Australian Aboriginal writings. And then most of the white Australians, they had misrepresented or misinterpreted the Aboriginal life in their writings, in their own white writings. And this also, these Black Australian writers objected to this, and they came out with a lot of works which showed the true identity of the Black Australians. And so this is how Australian Aboriginal literature helped a lot in bringing together the natives themselves and also to project their identity to the whole world outside. Okay, so these are two examples that from other countries. Now I would like to talk about our own tribal identity, tribal people who are the indigenous people who are marginalized, who are not recognized, and they lead a life disconnected from the mainstream country. So actually, I was wondering whether whether I was into fourth world literature, whether I knew anything in fourth world literature. But actually, I myself and my scholars are into it, because one of my scholars did research in Northeast Indian tribe on the writer Eastern Kire, as Dr. Dunstan was referring to Eastern Kire and Temslav. He worked on the works of Eastern Kire, and there too, the people were having a rich culture. Their lifestyle was very good, and they lived very close to nature, and but still they were marginalized by the mainstream people, the whole of Northeast India itself, it's marginalized or cut off from the mainland India. Okay, so sometimes the northeastern people are not uh, accepted as people, Indian people, some people in some areas, and also those people, some of them they do not accept mainland India as their own country, because, probably because of the racial difference, because they are most of them are belong to the Mongolian race, and also they are cut off because of this cultural differences, because of not non-recognition of their culture, life, and other things. Now there are a lot of literature from the northeastern region. We have a lot of writers writing in English about the northeastern Indian tribal people, their indigenous ways of life, their culture, and all those things. So these things are projected to the outside world, and now we feel that we recognize each other, those people recognizing them, our culture, and we recognizing their culture, and so that's going on. Then the next thing is, even in South India, we have tribals living in many parts of the Western Ghats, and two of my scholars are doing research in the Nilgiri tribes, and one is doing on the Paniya tribes. Actually, this is what I would like to discuss, because they do not have a written language. As Ma'am Mehrunissa Pathan, Dr. Mehrunissa Pathan was telling, language is very important. These tribal people, they do not have a scripted language, but they have only oral language, which is slowly dying. So it's very important that these oral narratives or oral literature need to be recorded in script, or we need to educate the tribal people so that they write about their culture, their heritage, so that it is known to the outside world. So this oral narratives, uh, when we listen to the oral narratives, it is full of good stories, songs which reflect their culture, their life. It is so rich and so beautiful, very close to nature. But most of the world do not know about this, and so it is pertinent that now we take up this issue and record the oral narratives in written form, so that the people, the culture and heritage of these people are made known to the world, and vice versa. We also come to know of the life and culture of these aboriginal or the indigenous people living in the forest areas, in mountains, because there's a lot that we can learn from their lifestyle, and there's a lot that we can also help them come out of their marginalized position. So education is another thing that even Dr. Ambedkar was telling. We should educate these people so that they come out, they reflect the rich heritage in their works, so that this is made known to the world. So with this, I conclude my keynote address. But before that, I would like to tell all the prospective researchers to take up literatures uh, written by the native writers or indigenous writing. Take up indigenous writings for your research, because as we dig deeper and deeper, new areas will be explored. We come to understand the indigenous way of life in a better manner, and today's world needs the concern for nature is very important, and this we can learn a lot from the writings of the indigenous people. So here, even my argument is, I don't think that we should club Dalit literature. This is my own opinion. Anyone, if you want, you can pose your questions. This is my opinion that indigenous or the fourth world literature should be, the fourth world should contain, or the fourth world literature should contain the literatures produced by the indigenous people. and that may include the tribals because they are the native people who have their own culture. They are not in the main world. They are not affected by modernization or globalization, and they have similar problems. Like they don't. Most of the indigenous people or the communities, they do not have a written language. They have a rich culture. They have a heritage. They have a rich past. Okay, they have a rich history, and all these things they should be put up in literature in written form so that uh, the the gap between the indigenous people and the modern world is lessened, and we go for both. We go for a better prospect life. So I feel that researchers should take up writers like Momode and Adam Shoemaker and the tribal literatures. Even Northeast Indian literature is gaining popularity now. Earlier, they were also the marginalized section. So take up such literature and let us research and explore more areas, uh, enlighten or eliminate many areas that were in the dark earlier. Thank you very much. Once again, I thank Dr. Rajan Silvers who invited me to be a keynote speaker in this 3-day virtual conference on Fourth World Literature. Thank you. Any questions? If you have any questions, you can ask me. Any clarifications, I mean. Thank you very much.
Participants, if you have any clarifications, if you need any clarifications or if you have any queries, you can unmute and ask. You can also type the questions in the chat box.
And one note I would like to add, I'm not an expert in this area. I'm also a learner, but I can always share whatever I know. Okay, so thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for your patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vasuki, for shedding light on the fourth world literature by the natives, who are for so long deprived of their due recognition. We live in a time when the writings of marginalized writers go amiss from the syllabus of universities. This virtual conference is an attempt to remember and honor the contribution of the indigenous communities and writers. Once again, I thank Dr. Vasuki and his scholars for recognizing all these things and also for delivering the keynote address. Thank you, ma'am.